Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another webinar series for today. I'd like to say thank you for dialing in, for taking out time to dial in. SPE is a body that is known to share information both from a professional perspective and a technical perspective. And if you joined in for our first Women in Energy event today, you'd see the impact that had on the participants. But for now, today is a webinar, and we'll be hearing from the speaker on the topic called Managing Up, Bossing the Boss. For me, when I saw this topic, it was quite interesting to me, and I felt it was something that people would be interested in hearing about. For me, I have a few challenges. I'm sure some of us do have some of those challenges. So I'm sure it's not just about bossing your boss. It's really about how we can together partner to get the best out of that relationship, the boss and subordinate relationship. So we'll be hearing from our speaker today, who is by the name Margaret Johnson. It's taken out of her busy schedule to take us through this topic. She utilizes a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the Michigan State University. She has an MBA from the University of Houston and a professional engineering license, as well as an International Coach Federation license. She's involved in corporate coaching, to inspire people and definitely organizations to what she calls moving away from same old stuff to well on the way, which is really where we all want to be. She has worked for over 20 years in the energy industry, performing engineering analysis, managing technical and non-technical personnel, selling mechanical services, and marketing O&M services to energy executives. She's presently the president of Ideal Training, where she trains and coaches professionals with a mission to unleash creativity, ignite ideas, and remove barriers to success. She applies creativity and encourages risk taking to assist clients in solving problems and opening doors, and to keep her classes from leadership development to indoor cycling. Okay, so some of her interests. I would like to say also that she actually gets paid to deliver this same topic. So I'm looking forward to this topic. She has graciously offered to impact us with her own wealth of information on a volunteer basis. So I would like to indulge us to please put ourselves on mute so we could gain from her wealth of experience. If you do have any questions, kindly put them in the chat room and we would respond to those questions at the end of the presentation. So at this note, I would like to invite Margaret Johnson. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you could go ahead and share your slides. Okay, great.
Okay. And there we are. Thank you so much for letting me share this. This is one of the most popular topics that I have. And I think it's just so important, relationships. Everything is all about relationships. A lot of people actually leave their jobs because of their management and poor relationships. So it's so important to take some time to really reflect on the relationships that you have in the workplace, and maybe some relationships you don't have yet that you need to start focusing on. I'd like to first paraphrase the work of David Bradford. He is one of the co-authors of the book Influencing Up, and he says that people at higher levels, they tend to go deaf. Really, they're not really listening to us anymore. And those at lower levels tend to develop laryngitis. They just don't speak up. And I believe that these afflictions can be cured, that it's all about relationships, and that is what we will be exploring in managing up, developing effective relationships at all levels within your organization. And these tips will also help you in your personal relationships. But I affectionately like to call this topic bossing the boss. By the time our session is over, you will have busted assumptions that you have about managing up, kind of laying all over the floor wherever you are. And you'll also walk away with some tips and some techniques that can help you develop better relationships and better bossing. So, what do we mean when we say managing up? It's not just a one-time event. It's not just one thing that we do, one conversation that we do, meet someone and talk, and then you just move forward. It's really a process. It's a process of partnering with people consciously, superiors inside your organization, and also outside, also externally to the organization. I think sometimes we forget about those relationships. We're so focused on just the person right above us in our organization. And it's looking for the best possible results that are not just for you, not just things turning out well for you, which is important, but also looking at them, looking at your bosses, what do they need? And then also combining that with the organization. So the best results for this whole triangle of you and them and the organization. And sometimes people say, well, why do I need to care about that? You know, I just need to do my job. Well, if we do partner effectively with others, it can make things easier for us. It can make our work a lot easier. It can smooth processes. If you have connections, you will know things that you might not have known. And so it can really make us more efficient and more productive and less stressed. And it can give you opportunities that you might not have had before. So if people know that you're excellent at speaking, or they know that you're excellent in a process or have a certain technical knowledge, if they know that at higher levels, then opportunities for you will come up because people are aware of what you can do. I know that when I was in the power industry, I'm a crazy creative. And when deregulation was coming through in the industry here in the United States, that they needed someone to help the accountants. They needed someone to help the accountants put together a program to help everyone understand what a profit center was. So I was invited to do that, and that opportunity of helping the accountants, I actually created a game where everybody owned power plants, and they would make decisions or things would happen to them, and then they would get to see the results on their bottom line. And that, I think, is one of the things that catapulted me into eventually starting my own business. So that opportunity to, someone saw me as a crazy creative that could help the accountants make the information more interesting. And it opened up a lot of opportunities for me within the company, and then also helped me as I went off on my own. So it's so important to connect with people, let them know who you are, find out who they are, and that the benefits that you'll reap will go on for years. And you'll probably enjoy your job more and want to stay there more too. So that can always be a good thing. So think about yourself personally. Have you missed some opportunities because someone didn't know about you? That they didn't know that you could do something and someone else got a job or an opportunity you would have liked? Or can you think about something that you got to do because someone knew about you, someone was your champion, and you were able to get that? It gives you a little realization of how those relationships can affect things. When I work with my coaching, executive coaching, corporate life coaching clients, and also when I teach some business classes, I think it's super important to work with visuals. And a little example, I think you can see me on the screen. All right. I want you to take out your right hand and bring your thumb and your index finger together. And then bring your hand to your chin. Bring your hand to your chin. Okay, I see some people out there actually have their hand on their chin, and others of you are right up here on your cheek. So a lot of you are down here, which I said chin, but I showed you up here. And what happens is a lot of people are visual, so they watch and their hand's up here. And others, their hand was down here because they're more auditory. And that's really, there's nothing wrong with whichever way you ended up. It just means that one form of communication, that your main form might be more visual. It's going to help for you to see slides instead of me just talking and us having a telephone conversation. So right there, that little piece of information might be very useful for you when you're working with people and you're wondering how come they're not paying attention or they're not responding to what you're doing. Maybe instead of just talking, you need to actually draw a picture. So I have some pictures up here on the screen. And on the left, I have a totem pole. And if you think about managing up and bossing the boss and your relationships at work, the same old stuff, the place that a lot of us are stuck in, for me, is this totem pole. And even though I have my own company, I do teach fitness classes and work with corporations. So, for example, in the fitness organization, I am at the bottom of the totem pole. And when I want to suggest an idea or do anything, I can't go up here and tell people, right, what it is. I have to work my way up the totem pole. So for me, managing up situation in that one organization, what does it look like right now? What is my SOS, my same old stuff? It's like a totem pole. And how I'd like it to be is I would like it to be this, like a box of chocolates, where everybody has different capabilities, has different qualities, has different strengths, and we're all sharing. We can all connect with anyone. That's how I'd like my managing up to be, that relationship. I actually, in a lot of organizations, I just go straight to the top. I've written letters to corporations and gotten results that way. So maybe I really do have a box of chocolates. But I want you to think about this from that visual aspect. And where are you as far as your relationships in your organization? You know, what does that look like right now? What is your same old stuff, SOS? And how would you like things to be? How would you like, after some of the tips and techniques that you gain today and you implement those, how would things turn out for you? So I would like you to either write that down for yourself, think about that, or if you have your phone with you, you could Google, you know, some pictures and maybe get a visual for yourself of what that would like. So I'd like you to think about your SOS and your WOW as far as managing up, and what does that look like? Keeping that in mind. So how are we going to get you from that SOS, that totem pole, to the box of chocolates? The plan is first to look at assumptions, then to look at who do we need to partner with, who are we not partnering with, who are we partnering with and it's not going so well, we might need to make some changes. Then the basis for a lot of these partnerships, our relationships, is trust. How does that look? Do people trust you? What do you need to trust other people? And how can you work together more effectively if you know each other's strengths and weaknesses and what their work styles are, what their expectations are, what their legacy is? And then to actually speak up and to do something and to make a change, it really involves taking a risk. We'll explore what your goal is from SOS to WOW and how you can be more courageous and actually start connecting with people at higher levels that you might be uncomfortable right now. And the last piece is, which I trust that maybe we don't have to spend much time on it because I'm sure none of you have a less than ideal boss. But we will give you some tips on how you can handle less than ideal bosses, ones that might not be very effective or very difficult to work with, and how you can handle those situations. The biggest obstacle for us to have better relationships is actually the stories we tell ourselves, the assumptions that we have about people, that they don't have time for us, that we just don't get along because of personalities and we're never going to be able to get along with them, that maybe we think our boss should know these things and we shouldn't have to share those things, or that, you know, you don't need to manage or have relationships with people at higher levels in the organization or even outside the organization, that all you need to do is have that relationship with your immediate boss and that everything will be fine. So these assumptions can really hold us back. When I'm in person with groups, I play a little assumption game. And in it, I first ask the audience, if I brought a live horse into the room here, a live quarter horse, how many of you could actually saddle that baby up, that you could clean the hoofs on that horse, that you could mount that horse and get it to actually do things on purpose and not accidentally? And I asked them not to raise their hands, but to look around the room and see if they could pick out the cowboys and cowgirls in the room. And then I let all those people in the room then that could do that raise their hand so people can look and check and see if they were right about the cowboys and the cowgirls. And I'll tell you, half the time, everybody's wrong about the cowboys and cowgirls. I asked them a series of questions that have to do with how many people do you think in the room are bilingual? Who do you think is bilingual? Who do you think can actually drive a stick shift, a manual transmission, not automatic, right? Or how many of you think you're good dancers? And I test all of these out, and people think in their head, oh, I think that person would be in that. And it turns out they are wrong half the time. So all these stories we're telling ourselves about managing up, about these assumptions we hold about other people, we are really wrong a lot of the time. And because of our thoughts, we're not taking action. And this rolls right into the ladder of inference, which is first we have some experience, right? Or we observe some data. We see something happening at the office. And so we start to collect information. Oh, they're not very friendly, or look how busy they are all the time. They don't have time for me. Or somebody submitted an idea or shared an idea and it got trashed. So I'm never going to share an idea because it got trashed. So we start to collect data from what we see and what we hear. And we selectively collect our information. We might miss out on times that people's ideas were listened to. We just see when they weren't. And so because of that, we start to make these assumptions about managing up. We draw conclusions. We then adopt beliefs. And because of our beliefs, we start to take action. So you don't talk to people. You're afraid to do certain things. You think certain people are ornery or don't have time. And that is how you act. And this is called the ladder of inference. So what I'd like you to do right now is I'd like you to write down some of the assumptions that you have about managing up. Whether it's, I don't really need to do that. My boss and I have a great relationship and they can share everything with anyone above there and they can be my champion. Or you don't think they have time to listen to you. Whatever stories you've been telling yourself about managing up, I'd like you to write down some of those right now for yourself. Take a minute to do that. And then if you've got a list of more than one, out of the list, I'd like you to just pick one of those and look at it and go, what if this was not true? What if they did have time for me? What if they, really don't know about my strengths and they're not my champion and I thought they were? And so if you think about that, how would you act differently? What are you not doing right now that you would do if you thought, if this assumption was not true? So if you took the assumption of, I don't have time, they don't have time for me, it's really looking at what is important to them and how you can get their attention. So when I was in technical sales, I knew that the executive, the CEO, making money was his most important thing. Right? And so you would just hear him going down the halls all the time, like, are you making money today? We're in sales. Are you making money today? Da, 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 what's going on? Make some more money. Go out there and make some money. So, it was pretty entertaining, but it's also pretty serious that was his focus. And I had some ideas for the organization. So I knew to hone in on what was important to him. And I just passed him in the hallway one day. And I just, said, hey, I've got some ideas on how we can really make some money. If you want to know, let me know. And he just almost made a, 180-degree turn and said, hey, set up some time with my administrative assistant. And I got a whole hour with him. So, what I believe is happening for a lot of people is because you're holding these stories that you think are true, you are preventing yourself from this opportunity to actually be able to make some progress, to share some ideas, and to really make an impact in the organization. Okay, so keep that list in mind. You can grow your list and you can start to look at each of those things. And if it wasn't true, what would you do differently? And then actually take that action, take those steps to do something differently. So when we look at examining and developing relationships, the first thing is to go, who do you need to partner with? Who are you partnering with right now? And are there some people in the organization that you're not connecting with? So, example, I'm an independent consultant. And when I connect with a client, I have that contact within their organization. But am I also looking at people above them and presenting some ideas that that whole organization might benefit from? So not just having that one contact at that vendor, at that outdoor organization, outside organization, but looking at relationships above that. Maybe you want to bring some ideas to people at higher levels within your organization. Well, are you partnering with people that already have a connection with them? People that already have a good relationship with them that could give you some tips, or their administrative assistant, their connection, their executive assistant. If you can convince their executive assistant or other people that know them better than you do that your idea is very valuable and deserves some time, then that person will be a champion for you to connect to them. So take a moment to think about some of the connections you have right now. Are you just having relationship, having connection to your immediate bosses and or just the people immediately underneath you? Or have you developed some partnerships all along the organization? And is there one person that you could pick right now that you haven't connected with that you could start connecting with and develop that relationship? As we go through the next part of this, developing these relationships at a deeper level, I'd love to share this story of premarital counseling. I've been married for 35, it's going to be 36 years this year. And when my husband and I got married, we had to go through premarital counseling in the church. And it consisted of a few visits with the priest, but also several meetings with a sponsor couple. And at each meeting, a couple that had been married for many years and had been trained through the church. And at each of those meetings, we would fill out a questionnaire separately, my husband and I, on an area of, marriage, of relationship, of finance, of romance, whatever it was. And then we'd go over our answers together and talk with the sponsor couple. And I remember the one topic we went through was finance and how much money would you spend without consulting your spouse? And I had written maybe $2,000 on that. And I thought about it for a little bit and I brought it back down to 1,000. And then my husband had written $25 and he decided, well, maybe I could spend a little more without asking her, and it went up to $50. So here, when we sat down to look at our answers, I was here at 1,000, he was here at $50, which was very interesting and entertaining that we were way off on that part of our relationship. And it turns out one day my husband was talking about this computer software and asked me if he could buy it. And I thought it was, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of dollars. And I said, how much is it? And he goes, $25. And I'm like, why are you asking me? But the point of that is, as we develop relationships, we need to have these conversations. We need to look at what are people's tendencies and expectations and all of that. And if you're not having that, you're really going into all of this blindly and really going to have a more difficult time. So think about it as this premarital counseling kind of work is sitting down and having conversations about different aspects of your work and how you're going to connect and what they're looking for and what their expectations are. And things will go along a lot more smoothly and be a lot more effective and easy for you. As we
Small, small.
look at
How can I
partnerships
mute them?
and relationships, The basis, the foundation for our relationships is building trust. When I think of trust, these are what I think of is consistency in the behavior, integrity of they are doing what they said they were going to do, and communication being open and clear and not hoarding information so that I can do my work very effectively. And also in consideration for other people. One of the other fitness instructors that I work with at the gym, she works for some lawyers and she works downtown. And in order to get to her class, she has got to leave on time from work. And what will happen a lot of times is the lawyers will have something that they could have brought up earlier in the day, but it's an emergency all of a sudden. And like 5 minutes before she's got to go out the door, they're bringing something to her. So there's a lack of consideration there. She can't really trust them to let her go and go teach her classes every day. So think about yourself and your partnerships in the organization. And how would you grade yourself on some of these? And could you grade yourself other people? I know that when I had one client who didn't trust their boss and they went into the person above them to have this conversation about how they weren't getting along. And that higher level person said, well, do they trust you? So it's two-sided. It's not just about can you trust them, but are you doing things that you can be trustworthy to them, and that can help the relationship. Some of you may be familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and Stephen Covey, this is son of Covey, wrote a book called Speed of Trust. And in that there's some competencies, some characteristics that he brings up as for trusting. And underneath character, you can see what we have here about talking straight or demonstrating respect to other people. Or if you screw something up, are you writing that wrong? There's also this, not just your character, but your capabilities. Are you trying to always learn and improve on yourself? Are you clear about expectations? Do you deliver? Do you do what you're supposed to do? And then some of those that fall under both categories are listening first and keeping your commitments and extending trust to others. So what I'd like you to do right now is to think about one yourself. Is there an area here listed on the slide that maybe is something that you need to work on a little bit harder? I know for me, my personality, and we'll talk about personalities in just a bit, but I'm kind of that reactive, responsive. You say something, I do something, you say something, I say something. And so listening first, which I'm a coach, a credentialed coach, and that is I'm a professional listener, been trained to listen first, to pay attention very deeply beyond just the words that people are saying, the body language, even when they pause, what does all of that mean? So that is one good thing for me, for my personality. That's always a challenge, is to step back and hold back and not be so quick to respond. So think about yourself. What could you work on that would make you more trustworthy? Are you aware of your reputation in the workplace as far as trust goes? Are there some people that you could talk to and find out what it is that you might need to work on, or whether people trust you? And then what do you need from other people? And if you're not getting that, how could you have a conversation around that to get that, especially with your boss? So take a minute to think about that. Commit to working on one of these, and what is the thing that you will do? Okay. As we get deeper into trying to develop these relationships, it's important to connect. We can partner with people on strengths and weaknesses. There's a book that I highly recommend, that if you haven't ever heard of it, I know it's backwards on the screen. It's called Strengths Finder. It's by Tom Rath, R-A-T-H. The original book was Now Discover Your Strengths by the Gallup organization. And those of you that like assessments or references, it is a great book to check out. Just make sure if you buy a book, maybe on Amazon or that you buy a new book, not a used book, because there's a secret code in the book for you to take an assessment and look at what your strengths are. But we naturally have strengths, things that we're really good at. Maybe you're really good at organizing. So you could partner with someone who's not very good at organizing, but they're really good at speaking, a higher level person, and you could organize their top for them. And they could, of course, do the presentation part of it, or maybe vice versa. I know a young client that I had that she was super organized, and the executives were always having her assist them by helping them put together their presentations. And she was highly valued by them, and it was a great partnership. So look at your strengths and your weaknesses. What are those? And how could you partner with people? And don't always just think above you when we think about managing relationships, but also those people that report to you. If you're a project manager, what could you partner with some other people? A lot of times we do this naturally. We know what our strengths are. We know what other people's strengths are. We kind of naturally do that, but it's important to also really sit down and write these things out. Ask other people what they are. I remember one of my when I first started in technical sales, and I was contract, and one of the executives asked me, Margaret, you have done this and you've done that, and you're strong in this and whatever. How can you help us be better? How can you help this organization be more effective and be more productive and more profitable? And I'd never had a boss say that to me before. And I think that conversation would be something that very important for you to open up with other people, or if you are in management, executive, whatever level you're at, to open up that kind of conversation and make sure that you know what other people's strengths and weaknesses are. So what's going to be your first step as you start to look at this? Are you going to go take that assessment and now discover your strengths? Are you going to talk with some other people about how they see your strengths, and does it match with what you think you're good at? And let them know that. It was like I mentioned when we first started, if they know what you're really good at, there's going to be some opportunities that come to you that you might not have had before. Looking at work styles and expectations, right? I mean, we did that little exercise with the cheek to the chin. Just knowing that about people can be very effective. Are they love to work on their own? Are they great in a team? What are their styles? Are they morning people? Are they night people? I had an executive coaching client that I'm a night owl, and I was working on writing a book and staying up late, and I had something I needed to ask her. So I sent her an email, and it was 4:00 in the morning, right before I was going to sleep. And I sent the email out, and I'm ready to shut my computer down. And all of a sudden she responds, and she was like all excited, oh my gosh, someone else awake at 4:15 in the morning. I'm going to go and run right now. What are you going to do, Margaret? And I just responded back like, I am going to sleep. Like, I've been up all night, and we'll see you, talk to you later today. And that was the difference in our work styles. So, you can email people at 3, 2 in the morning, right? But knowing those things about people so that you can connect better. I don't work that great at, 6:00 in the morning. My brain is not the functioning at its best, but at 2 in the afternoon or 11 or something later in the morning, that's important to me. So knowing that about yourself and knowing that about other people, you can work more effectively together. Do you know what they're expecting out of you? A lot of times a new boss comes in, new management, new executives come in, and we just work the same way we used to because we don't know any better. So do you know what they're expecting out of you when they, what is super performance? How can I work more effectively with you? What kind of this and that? What do you need from me? And looking at why are people micromanaging you? Are they don't trust you? Is that just the way they've always done it before? Da, 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 da. So having conversations around these things is so important to make work so much easier. I know that I probably had these kind of conversations, but not really focused and on purpose. And I wish that I knew these things when I was a younger engineer. Now, some of you are like, oh my gosh, I've never talked to these people at these higher levels before. How do I talk to them now? How do I start conversations with these people now when they don't even know my name? Well, it's when I was a young girl, I had a crush on a guy, and I was so scared to talk to guys, right? When I saw him, I got all tongue-tied. And what I ended up doing is I ended up writing down a couple questions or some things that I could say. If I ran into him, he was an altar boy, we were in some classes together. What could I ask him? What could I say so I wouldn't be tongue-tied? So I had this little set of questions ready. And it turned out that worked perfectly. Whenever I ran into him, I had a question ready or I had a comment ready, and I was no longer tongue-tied. So I recommend for you, to actually, if you're kind of caught off guard sometimes, maybe you're in the elevator with the executive and you just don't know what to say, that you write down a few things. You think about a few little things that you could say to anyone at any level, and that you have that kind of in your pocket and always update that compared to, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in, oil and gas, what's going on at your work, what's going on in the universe. And so that you're always kind of prepared. And that worked. I didn't realize it back then, but that method really works in networking, when you're going to events and you don't know people, when you're unexpectedly running into people that you would love to have a connection with at higher levels. It starts with just that. It just starts with simple, hi in the elevator. I don't know if I've met you before. My name's Margaret, just that. And it develops into having those questions ready. And then maybe you can actually, hey, I'd like to have a 15-minute meeting with you. So it's a process, as I mentioned in the beginning, and it can just start with that little hello, but you can kind of use that little technique that I used when I was a shy little girl to start to be ready when you just run into somebody unexpectedly. What I want to remind you is not to think just about people at higher levels inside and outside the organization, but also to think about those people that you manage and those people that you support, and consider those people and how can you help them manage you better, right? So we've been talking about having conversations with people above us, of starting to develop those relationships, focusing on what they value, what pressures they are under, what expectations are on them that you can help them with. But now it's also important for you to think about those people that work under you. How can you support them? How can you, like in this picture, maybe some of you have done that team building exercise before. I've never done it. I've just heard about it, where people fall back and you're supposed to catch them. How can you help them manage you? If they're not asking you for a meeting, for a conversation, maybe they're afraid of you, right? How can you support them? Well, you can invite them to a conversation. Hey, I'd like to have a conversation around what your strengths are, what your concerns are, and look at, what they might need, and offer them that conversation. And in that conversation, talk about how you can work together. Are they a cheeker or a tinner? Are they a night owl or not? Have you looked at their personalities? Have any of you ever taken a personality style assessment, like Myers-Briggs or DISC or Insight? I've even heard ones are animals and colors. Some of you have done that before. Are you that driven, competitive, results-oriented person? Are you that flamboyant? You run into the office and then all of a sudden everyone's happy because now you're here. Mr. or Miss Sunshine has now appeared in the office. Are you that very process-oriented person that follows steps, that follows the procedures and the rules? Or are you the person that is so much more focused on the team and the skills of other people and making sure you can work more effectively together? It's so important to know that. It's important to know that about the people that work for you and the people that you work for, to figure that out. I think you can tell a lot about that just by interacting with people, but you can ask them too. I know when I was in technical sales, I had a manager, Gary, that asked me if an invoice should be paid. Now, it was a client that I had been working with, and there was a whole story about why this invoice needed to be paid. And when Gary asked me if it should be paid, I started telling this whole story. I said, oh, da, 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 da. And after a few seconds, 30 seconds, Gary looks at me and he goes, Margaret. I go, yes. He goes, should I pay the invoice? And I go, yes. So Gary was one of those direct, focused, results-oriented people. And I knew working with Gary going forward, I didn't need to tell all the stories, that he trusted me. Okay. Now, a lot of times I am that direct and focused kind of person. Other times, like today, I've been sharing lots of stories with you. So get to know the people that work with you, for you, and above you. There's different ways to do that. I know even in an email, you can tell if you write an email to someone and they're not responding to all the questions in your email, you know that probably you need to just put question in that email. They're very direct, results oriented. You ask them this, they say yes, no. So pay attention to people not just below you and above you, right? All the way through that organizational totem pole. So now you got to do something. If things are going to change, right? Remember the totem pole and the box of chocolates? You wrote down what things look like for you and how you would like things to be. So if things are going to change, you're actually going to have to take a risk. You might have to speak to someone you've been afraid of. You might have to go out there and work on some project or connect with something that you haven't been doing before. And risk taking goes two ways. It can be a risk if you do something. It can be a risk if you don't do something. So you're missing out if you don't do something. But if you do something, you might screw up. So heck, let's do something. First of all, the first step is to clarify a goal. And your goal, some of you have already written that down, right? Your SOS, your totem pole, how things are right now, and you're managing up in your relationships. And your wow, the picture of how you'd like things to be, that's your goal right there. Could be your goal. You can change that, but thinking about the risk-taking steps, you might want to look at that right now. Second way is evaluate different ways to accomplish your goal. So maybe you want a new, more challenging opportunity, all right? You could start to have some conversations with people that are working in an area that you want. You could start to develop relationships with executives that are over that area. You could quit your job and go run off to some other company. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you could accomplish that, right? But we want to look at your risk-taking tendencies. For some of you, it's just going to scare the crumb out of you. It's going to be just too hard for you to do some things. So what kind of a risk taker are you? When I'm in person with groups with this topic, we actually play a game called Red Light, Green Light. And I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard of that game. It was a game I played as a kid on the sidewalk. And all the neighbors would be at one end of the sidewalk, and I would be it. And the goal of the game is to be the first person to run on the sidewalk and catch me, catch me. I don't move, but you have to be the first one to get to me. And you do it by, I have my back turned to the group and I say red light or green light. And when I say green light, everyone can run toward me. When I say red light, you have to stop. And if I turn around and you're moving still, then you have to go back to start. So that's how you play the game. And I've actually done this game in my presentations when I present this topic because it's a model for real life. Now, it'll change if I started offering, I do offer prizes for the winners, and even if you just play. But your tendencies, your risk-taking tendencies show up in this game. So there might be some people that just take little baby steps. They're kind of, there's other people that run like a bat out of hell. They don't care if I said red light or green light, they're running. They're going to take a chance that I turn around slow and don't see them moving. And I think that when we have models and games like this, it shows a little bit of our real tendencies in real life. So are you a baby stepper? And maybe you just need to start to talk, just start to say hi to people. Some of you are going to go out there and just offer to have a conversation with someone or go in and ask, executives for certain things. So consider your risk-taking tendencies. And the way to improve your possibility of success, increasing your reward risk ratio, is to start to, one, collect more information, right? That's more information about these people. I knew that executive, that CEO, was interested in money, making more money. I knew that. I knew what his values were. I knew what was important to him. I focused on that. So getting more information can help you, taking more time, more preparation, doing some role playing with some other people on the conversations that you want to have. going in together instead of just you asking for a meeting. Have the whole team go in and ask the boss if, hey, can we have a meeting where we share our strengths and we talk about expectations more clearly and, find out if people are cheekers or chinners, visual or auditory. So those are some different ways that you can increase your possibility of success. And then the key right here is to just take some action. Because if you don't, you might miss out on opportunities. Work might be more stressful and less productive because you haven't streamlined things by connecting with people. Now, it turns out we do have a few minutes to talk about the less than ideal bosses, right? Have you ever had one? I've left a job because of a less than ideal boss. I've actually gotten a less than ideal boss fired. I don't recommend that. There's a lot of politics in work, and there's a lot, you really have to walk a fine line and be careful, always involve human resources. But there are some people that just need to go out there. But when you're working with less than ideal bosses, you're having difficulties. The first thing is to step back and look at understanding their incompetence. Do you have assumptions about them? Talk with some other people. What is their understanding of what's going on with the boss? Look at those assumptions you might be holding, and maybe you just on the first day you met them, you didn't hit it off very well, but maybe they were just having a tough day, and so you went on and just started to think that they were grumpy and couldn't work with them. And so think about really your biases, and are those really true? And they may not be, and you may really be able to open up that relationship and have different kinds of conversations. The second part dealing with less than ideal bosses is if you want to go in and have a conversation about the micromanaging or the techniques or styles or whatever, make it about you. Don't go in there and say, hey, you do this, you do that. You say, I work best under this kind of thing, and I've been having difficulty. Make it about you and focus around how the organization, yourself, and the boss, maybe if we tried this might work better. So you can have those conversations, but don't make them accusatory. I had a client, a leader, that her boss was not an effective manager, and she always had to step up and help him be a better manager. And she would work around and develop relationships above him and was able to actually really effectively manage that without making him look bad and helping him a little bit. I said that I have ratted out a boss before. I do not recommend it. If you're considering something like that, let's have a conversation. You can make an appointment on my website. But it was just in the fitness industry. We had a boss that was just, telling people that they needed to lose some weight and and always harassing people. And there were a lot of instructors that were having trouble. And so I told them to all write their stories down. I would talk with HR and get us a meeting. And so I didn't really get them fired, but I helped change that situation by getting voices heard. So HR can help you, human resources area can help you with those bosses. But really a lot of times the issue is we're making assumptions, and we really could work with them if we just behaved a little differently or really got to know them a little bit better. And the last part of that is self-care for you too. When you're working in a difficult situation, to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Do some things that you enjoy. Take vacations, take breaks, exercise, eat right, get massages and nails done, and take breaks, go out with your friends, play poker, whatever it is, but make sure you're taking care of yourself. And that can help you deal more effectively with less than ideal bosses. So we have covered a lot of material. The main point of working together more effectively is we've been holding some assumptions about our bosses. We've been holding assumptions about dealing with people at different levels inside and outside our organization. And it's important for us to address those assumptions that you have about people so that you can start taking some action that you weren't taking before. Look at your partnerships. Who do you want to partner with that you're not partnering with? Or are you partnering with people and it's not working out really well? So what could you do differently? really get to know people. Remember the premarital counseling, kind of having conversations about people. How can we work better together? What are your strengths? What are you expecting? Oh, I didn't know you were expecting that. Don't focus just on above you. Also focus on those people. If you're a project manager or a manager, those people underneath you, help them work with you better too. And know that just by starting, just by opening it up, be the brave one, be the one that starts those conversations, says hello. A lot of times they don't have time, but they appreciate, other people appreciate you being the one that opens up this conversation for managing up and better bossing. And know that those difficult people, they may just be having a difficult time. And if we can step back and investigate a little bit more and assume positive intent. I know one of my clients that in their corporation, that API was one of their slogans, their logos, and it means assume positive intent. A lot of times we think someone's out to get us and da 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 da. But if you assume positive intent going into these conversations, I think you'll be more successful. You will have better relationships, and really, you will enjoy your work. You'll get more opportunities, and things will go along a lot smoother. We are going to address some questions that might have come up in the chat box in just a second. I do want to invite you to connect with me. I have a newsletter, an email newsletter on creativity and risk-taking and being more courageous in the workplace. It also addresses busting assumptions. You can sign up on my website, or you can just use your QR code on your phones, and if you pop over this QR code, it'll take you right to that. Also, if you'd like to have a conversation with me and, a little bit of coaching around managing up, you're all welcome to set up an appointment with me. I can Skype. I can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world. We can have a Zoom meeting, whatever you'd like. You can also do that on my website. You can bring me in internationally. I do travel all over the world. There are some assessments I recommend to you. I recommend some books to you. Like I said, the Strength Finder 2.0, that is for you to work on. There's emotional intelligence books, the EQ 2.0, if you want to help yourself in understanding people. And I also have a book from SOS to WOW, your personal coaching adventure. So let's get into your questions regarding bossing the boss, managing up. Elise?
Wow. Margaret, thank you so much for the wonderful delivery. For me, I learned quite a lot. So typically, I would normally kind of summarize the key takeaways, but I think Margaret, you've done a pretty good job in summarizing the key
Okay.
takeaways, basically. So I think that we just have about 2 minutes for Q&A. I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat room yet.
No, I haven't either. So,
Maybe, yeah, maybe people are still kind of reflecting it, because this really requires some mindset shift, especially with the assumptions and the fact that you have to ask yourself, what if those assumptions are not true? That would then drive you to take action, and the right kind of action. So maybe people are still reflecting on all of that. Do we have any questions? Please post them in the chat room, and Margaret can address them. Otherwise, we basically have. Okay, so I think there's an anonymous question outside of the group that came up. So the question is, what do you do if you have a boss with a non-challenge attitude to work? How do you manage such a person, someone who has a non-challenge attitude to work?
I'm not sure what is meant by a non-challenge attitude toward work.
Okay, so non-challenge, almost like I don't care sort of attitude
Okay.
to work. Yeah.
Yes. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care whatever. Here's how things are going to be. It's Yeah, I've had people try and have conversations with those people, and sometimes you just can't get somewhere with those people, and that is when it's really important to have other advocates. So it's step back and look at, are there people that are having more success with conversations with them, and kind of connect to them. I know that when I was working with I mentioned that I got invited to help the accountants develop a training program. And I knew that if I told the accountants I wanted to play this game, that they would think I was nuts. So I had an advocate, a champion that I went and talked to and explained that to him, and he was able to talk to them for me. So that can be another way to do that. If you're not having success, that they just they don't care, you know, talk to the hand, go away. That it's looking for someone that is having success connecting to them, talking to other people, see how they might have done that, or finding a champion that really trusts you and honors you and that is willing to do something like that for you.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Otherwise, I think we've even exceeded our time by a minute. But before we hang up, I would like to say if you have
Sorry,
any
I
more
had a question.
questions,
I was trying to come off mute. I
yes, go ahead.
apologize. Yeah, so I was saying that receiving feedback is quite difficult, and people tend to get defensive. Does Margaret have any strategies for giving and receiving feedback, especially when the senior person becomes very defensive about their performance? How do you advise to give difficult feedback, and how do you advise also receive difficult feedback?
The senior person is getting defensive with you're giving them feedback.
Yes, so you're in a situation where you're giving a senior person feedback, and maybe it's not what they want to hear, it's not what they expected, and so on. So how, maybe they start getting defensive. How do you um, still provide that feedback without ruining the relationship almost?
It really, before you give feedback, you need to have a connection at a certain level, and it depends how the feedback is offered. So remember, one of the things I said about difficult people is make sure it's about you and not about them. So part of it could be, if it's not being received very well, it's an accusatory kind of thing. So you can kind of open that one is developing conversation where you're comfortable. Having conversations, not like the first conversation you have is coming in and telling them how they're doing their job wrong. And I know I wanted to do that with a bad boss. I want to go right in there and tell them, look, you need to find out how we're doing things here before you start doing, da da da. So part of it is a check-in on your attitude before you go into those conversations. And it's also making it more about yourself, about, if they're a micromanager and you're trying to give them feedback on that, it's, in the past, I've worked like this before, and I'm concerned that some of these questions that you're asking me are because you don't trust me. Is there something that I da 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 da? So make it about you. So if they're micromanaging, you're focusing on not you micromanaging. You need to stop that. But here's how I've been working well before, and I'm concerned now that da 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 when these things are happening. And would you be able to share some light with me on that? I mean, I know we don't have a whole lot of time right now, and I'd be more than happy to have a specific conversation with you around what's going on for you. But it's really stepping back and how are you approaching that? What kind of things are you saying? Improving your emotional intelligence is really connecting on feeling what's going on with them and what's going on with you, and how are you approaching them? Are you angry with your fists up when you go in there, or
I have
how's
to
your
call you back. I'm
attitude?
in a meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, carry on.
Thank
Someone I think it was feedback. Sorry, go
Yes.
ahead, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Margaret, I think someone wanted to clarify the first question. So it's really about a lazy boss who doesn't care much about the work, and review. So what do you do if you have such a boss? How do you propose one can manage such a person?
So the boss doesn't care about the work that the group's
About the
performing?
work, the boss is sort of lazy and, doesn't work and basically, yeah, from that perspective.
Well, it's again stepping back and not saying, you're the problem, but,
Mm,
in might saying that these things are happening because we're not getting checks on that, and how could we would you be willing to have a conversation so how we could fix things so that these things don't happening, because here's what's happening outside of the group because this isn't being reviewed. So again, it's not a you're lazy and you're not
yeah.
checking your work, but it's because the work isn't getting reviewed, other groups are having some trouble. And so in this problem that the group is having, I think that it would be helpful if we got a review from you on this, kind of making it not you're so bad, but
Yeah.
here's how it's affecting us. And a suggestion would be, it would be really helpful if you could help us because you know so much about this, or, da, 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 da. So kind of presenting it that way. And if they just said, oh, I trust you, you guys go ahead. Well, then again, it's going to be, you've got to find a champion that can, if you've tried to talk to them and you're not making progress without making them the bad guy, kind of
Yeah.
making it the situation is the bad guy. Other groups are not getting what they need. Then it's time, you really got to look for a champion. And then if you can't do that, then you've just got to realize you almost have to manage yourself and manage your own group and work around that, because politics in the organization, if you try to trash that boss, it could hurt you without
Sure.
proper plan and awareness of all the politics. I understand that it is a big struggle, that it doesn't happen a lot, but there are a lot of bosses out there that just don't care, and they're in this place and they're living the easy life. And, you just are just supposed to go take care of all that. So you do have to do that, but it will show through. It will definitely show that you are the one that is championing and taking care of it and responsible, and they're not. And it'll eventually fall apart for them, but it's going to be very difficult and stressful for you. But it is, try to make it not about them, but about the situation and the work. And if that doesn't work, find a champion. And if that doesn't work, know that as long as you stay above board, it'll show through. They'll fall apart.
Yeah. Okay. I've just checked again. So I think we've exceeded our time by about 7 minutes. So I wouldn't want to take much of our time again. But if you have any questions, please let me know outside this webinar. Just reach out to the SPE mail, and we can always post the questions across to Margaret to respond to. So on this note, I'd like to say, Margaret, thank you so much for this presentation. I've learned quite a lot. I don't, for the sake of time, I don't want to share my own learnings because I typically do. I would just like to say to everyone, thank you for dialing in and being part of this. Margaret is actually logged in from Houston, and it's quite early over there, so you could imagine the sacrifice she has made to be part of this webinar.
That's
So
right.
we're
I
saying
told you I was a night owl.
exactly. So she's not even a morning person. So thank you so much, Margaret. Before we go, there's a flyer shared on the screen. Just stay tuned on our SPE website, our social media platforms to stay connected on some of the activities that we have coming up, and just keep yourself aware of all that we need to do. Um, we have a question come in from Ebenezer. I guess we can take it, Margaret, just before we sign up, and this will be the once you respond to that, that would be basically the end of the webinar. So his question is, how do you manage a boss who loves to engage in extorting money from clients with an attempt to bring you into the illegal deal? Interesting.
Wow. Okay. I actually had that kind of happen, not exactly like that. When I was a young engineer and we were doing some services at the plants, and someone in the group kind of came to me, but they were so vague about it. I didn't really understand what they were talking about, some extra projects or whatever. I just turned it down. And it turned out that they were utilizing company services and properties and, you know, doing some things, of course, illegal. I wasn't so involved or connected that I knew exactly what happened with that. People all disappeared. But you have to really look at your values and be sure of yourself, you know, because sometimes you can like, oh, am I, I don't know, that's which, so be sure of yourself and know what that is. And if you're being invited or pressured even, just let them know that, you know, that's not something that I want to be involved in. And you just kind of have to set your, I guess, set your stand that I'm not interested in that, and I don't wish to be involved in that. You know, I wouldn't thank them, but yeah, I'm not really, you know, that I'm. Now that you know about that, I don't know what you do with that. So you might want to consult a lawyer. But I would just say know yourself, know your values, know your stand, and then just stay steadfast to that because you don't want to ever compromise that. It's never going to be good. And I really didn't know what those people were doing, but I just stayed away from it. And they stayed away from me because they knew my values and what I was going to do or not. And so they just kind of went away, and it got taken care of some other way. I didn't have to turn anybody in, or I don't know if that helps. Consult a lawyer. Get some legal advice. But I would turn it down, whatever your values are, and then get some other help from someone more professional in that area.
Yeah. Okay, if that's the case, we've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you, everyone, for dialing in, and I wish you a good rest of the day till the next
Thank you.
webinar. Yeah, thank you.